Alrighty, so you might be asking yourself at this point, well, if we pass these thresholds, if we keep going on our current trajectory, in 100, 200 years, what we will have done will be irreversible on a human timescale, right? But you might be asking yourself, well, what about external forcing, right? What about Milankovitch cycles and volcanic eruptions and solar activity? Can that reverse what humans have done? And the answer is yes, but it's going to take a very, very, very long time. So just as a reminder, this graph is showing the CO2 in the atmosphere over the past 800,000 years. We know that the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has never been present in the atmosphere over the past 800,000 years. We are in totally unprecedented territory for this time period. And you can see just how quickly it's increasing, right? This is not part of that, natural cycle of hothouse, ice age, hothouse, ice age. We went to the hothouse and then we just kept going with the amount of carbon dioxide and the temperature. Right? And this graph is actually a little out of date. It says that we have not reached 420 when we have. We are there today in terms of parts per million of carbon dioxide. So is it possible for external forcings to reverse this amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? Using models that are based on observations and based on very well-tuned mathematical formulas that were calibrated using observations and past events. When we project forward into the future, we know that external forcings will not be able to induce a glacial period within the next 50,000 years if atmospheric CO2 concentration remains above 300 parts per million. All right, so if we stay where we're at, then even Milankovitch cycles, right, which are, as you can see, over Earth's history, have naturally caused the Earth to swing from total hothouse to total snowball, right? They won't be able to do that because of how much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that humans have emitted into the atmosphere. Even for the lowest RCP 2.6 scenario, and what I mean by that is the representative concentration pathways that the IPCC has come up with. The IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is a global scale collaboration among governments all around the world, where we get together and basically summarize what is happening with climate, and they make predictions, they make recommendations, they are the global panel on climate change. And they have what they call these RCP scenarios, where they predict in the future and say, well, if by the year 2100 we follow this scenario, this pathway, we're going to be at this carbon concentration. If we follow this pathway, we're going to be at this carbon concentration. Notice that RCP 2.6 has us increasing in carbon emissions up until about 2040, but then actually has us start reducing in carbon emissions, right? So we reduce our carbon emissions and we actually start taking carbon out of the atmosphere. That's the best case scenario, RCP 2.6. And even for the lowest RCP 2.6 scenario, atmospheric carbon dioxide will exceed 300 parts per million until the year 3000, right? So if you were wondering, is it possible for external forcings to fix this? The answer is no. Humans have to fix this. And it is possible, right? It absolutely is possible for us to limit global warming. This is another graph that doesn't necessarily show the RCP scenarios, but does show some scenarios between very high emissions and very low emissions. And you can see that there are pathways for us to eventually decrease the amount of carbon in our atmosphere, which will eventually decrease the temperature. We have already made it to 1 degree Celsius, right? That's not changing. We will continue to increase in temperature at least until about 2040, right? That's as far as we can look into the future, right? We know what the governments are doing. We know what industries are doing. We know what people are doing. We can predict to the near future that carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is going to continue to be released. However, if we, as a community, as a globe, vote into power people who will implement policies, who will hold industries accountable, it is possible for us to start not only decreasing our carbon emissions, but to implement carbon sequestration projects where we actually physically take carbon out of the atmosphere. And we can lower temperature on Earth. It's going to take us a while, right? We're going to start it now, and your grandchildren or great grandchildren are going to have to finish it. But we can prevent a lot of these catastrophic scenarios that we know can happen by looking at past analogs in those paleoclimates.